I don't think I'm as scared of dying as I should be, given how much I think about it. Although I consider myself a reasonable person, capable of opinions of a variety of topics, thoughts of death shatter any logical perspective that I may have. Fond memories of fireflies lighting up the neighborhood and the smell of the outside stain my clothes and hair, fade into memories of yesterday and become a poignant reminder that I too will die. Every year passes quicker than the last, compounding this realization. Why do we die? And if it's inevitable, why do we live? For millennia, human beings have wrestled with the inevitability of death. We of all beings are uniquely aware of our mortality. Each breath brings us closer to the last, yet the notion remains both distant and elusive until it is personally, often tragically, confronted. The irony of the human condition is that the more we contemplate death, the more we're driven to reflect on life itself. Death is both a finality and a mystery, the one experience that all humans will share, yet none can return from to report its true essence. Some have tried to simplify our understanding of death. Epicurus writes, "Death is nothing to us, since when we are, death has not come, and when death has come, we are not." It is a rational perspective, stripping death of its terror by declaring it devoid of experience. But rationality, when it comes to death, can often feel hollow. There's a deep visceral fear in knowing that we will one day cease to exist, that everything we are and everything we've built will dissolve into nothing. If life is transient, if everything we know and love will eventually be swept away, what is the point of striving, of creating, of loving? While we may ask these questions, the answers remain as elusive as death itself. Perhaps that is part of its truth. Our time on Earth is limited, and while people often say life is short, in truth, it's the longest thing we'll ever know. Yet we often live as though we have unlimited time. Society encourages long-term planning, investing in 401ks, saving for retirement, buying a house, as if we are all guaranteed a specific number of years. We are encouraged to delay gratification for a later reward, compounding our resources for future security. Essentially, we're edging life until we get to live at 65. But this assumption of longevity leads to a troubling question. What happens when life deviates from expectations? What if, despite all our planning, our lives end earlier than expected, and we never reap the benefits of our efforts? I think this unknown concerns me, because death is terrifying not only because it signifies the end of our existence, but because it strips away the illusion of control. As much as we try to plan and control our lives, death is the great equalizer. No matter how powerful, wealthy, or wise we become, death claims us all in the end. It's a tale as old as time, recounted in films, TV, motivational speeches, and even our own dreams. We imagine a future where at the end of our lives we find ourselves surrounded by the ghosts of dreams left unpursued, questioning, what if my whole life has been wrong? You realize that the things that you thought were important, your career, your social standing, were ultimately meaningless. In those final moments, we crave not accolades, but connection. We yearn for someone to recognize our humanity, to witness our vulnerability and care for us, not because of our achievements, but because we exist. This fear of a life lived in vain is deeply intertwined with our fear of death. It's not just the end of life that terrifies us, it's the possibility that we will reach that end and realize our lives were wasted. Death forces us to confront questions that only life can answer. What have I done with my time? And perhaps more importantly, what should I be doing with it now? In our secular scientific age, many people no longer find comfort in religious explanations of death. The afterlife, once a certainty for many, has become a topic of skepticism. Instead, we are left with the clinical, biological facts of death, the end of consciousness, the breakdown of our bodies. And yet, even in the scientific framework, death remains as mysterious and terrifying as ever. Our conscious experience of life is all we have, and it is fleeting. Realizing this fully can paradoxically allow us to live even more deeply. I'm under the impression that most people live inauthentic lives, absorbed in the distractions of everyday existence and avoiding the reality of their own finitude. It is only by confronting the inevitability of death that we can truly live authentically, making conscious choices about how to spend our time and what to value. So, how do we live with death? How do we integrate this awareness into our daily lives without succumbing to anxiety or despair? One approach is to cultivate mindfulness. By focusing on the present moment, we can alleviate the constant dread of the future and find peace in the here and now. This practice is central to many Eastern philosophies, particularly Buddhism, which teaches that suffering arises from our attachment to things that are transient, including life itself. When we accept the impermanence of all things, we reduce our fear of loss and find greater contentment in the present. Another approach lies in accepting our relationships, our loves, our achievements, are all fragile, subject to change and loss, and it is this very fragility that makes them meaningful. To love is to risk loss. To live is to risk death. But it is these risks that bring richness to our lives, filling them with meaning and value. Finally, we must accept that the question of death, like so many of life's greatest questions, may not have a definitive answer. We trouble life by the care of death, and death by the care of life. Perhaps the true wisdom lies in accepting the uncertainty, in embracing the mystery. Death will come, whether we are ready or not. The challenge is to live in a way that when it does, we are left with no regrets. In the end, death is not a problem to be solved, but a reality to be lived with. There's no single answer, only some form of guidance. Death is inevitable, but life is what we make of it. By confronting death, we are forced to confront life. What do we value? How will we spend the time that we have left? These are the questions that death compels us to ask, and the answers are ours to create. Death, in all its finality, reveals life's beauty and fragility. It teaches us that the art of living well is not in denying death, but in accepting it as part of life's inherent beauty. And so, with death as our companion, we must choose to live.